And we are live. Another CEO Wisdom Pod with Alex Wisch. He is CEO at Wisch Fit. Alex is a cool guy, quite competitive. So him and I share that in common. Two competitive dudes. He did ultras, he did MMAs, he did sailing, which we're gonna discuss about. And nowadays he is heading Wisch Fit Plus. He's also a partner at this loan firm. Yeah, makes a big deals, basically $1 billion deals in real estate. That's how I would sum it up. We'll talk about that a bit later. Before we do, this pod is brought to you by podfire.com. If you want to start, scale, or be invited to such a podcast, get sponsors to your pods. That is the company to help you, podfire.com. Podcasts are cool. Can get folks like Alex on to share their wisdom, get insights from them, apply these insights, get more money, get more leads, grow my community, get subscribers, and get clients. So pretty cool. Podbuyer.com. Alex, welcome to the pod. Can you tell me a bit more about yourself and about what you're up to nowadays?
I'll try to tell you in as brief as a paragraph as I can. So I am basically, to sum it up, I am an executive peak performance coach out of Wisch Fit as one of my career paths, where I work with like CEOs, executives. I work with professional athletes transitioning into the business space. Prior to that, I worked with Olympic athletes. I worked with professional athletes more on performance, mindset, some of the rock climbers for the Olympics. I worked with people training for OCR, American Ninja Warrior, for the TV show, some of the top competitors. So a lot of venture athletes. And then outside of that, I would call myself a serial entrepreneur. I have invested as an angel investor in multiple companies, started different companies, have another company called Connected, like I mentioned earlier. We do lending on multi-billion-dollar deals in the world of real estate, a lot of hospitality. And I developed a lot of my relationships through networking. And outside of that, I do fitness feats. I try to do one every year, every 2 years, raising money for mental health. And mental health is a huge area that I'm really passionate about, taking what I call my business or life ecosystem, and everything I do in the money side, everything I do in the personal side, it all wraps around to put that love and care back into the world on the mental health aspect.
Why is it a priority for you? Tell us about your story.
Sure. So my mental health story, it began when I was a sophomore in college. I was a competitive athlete. I was one of the top sailors in North America at the age of 18. And in college, I was also trying to go on a path towards the Olympics. So sailing and school were my big priorities. I was a student at UPenn, hardworking, 4.0 GPA, top of my class. And I totally burnt myself out my sophomore year, tried to sail in nationals. And literally I was out there doing the thing I absolutely loved doing and only thought about wanting to, simple as you put it, not wanting to live. At that point, I knew I had to leave school, get help. And for 8 years of my life, battled severe depression, never graduated college, ended up on disabilities, didn't have a home, didn't have support. You know, my parents thought I kind of gave up trying in life. So there's a lot of stigma there. Was in and out of the mental health system, hospitalizations, residential. I've seen it all. And then eventually I changed my narrative from this like external loss of control, thinking that there was like this cure solution externally of me, to focusing on like what I could control. And I really focused on things of nutrition, sleep, exercise. I focused on community, who I'm surrounding myself with, which is a huge issue in the mental health system, because a lot of people, when they get pulled into it, all they're around are other people that are ill, and you start developing the behaviors and habits of people around you. So other areas like communication, mindset, purpose, and like active recovery, went from that journey, eventually got into personal training. From personal training, used what I learned in the mental health space to work with eventually professional athletes. But I also started training people in venture capital, investors, steel manufacturing. And I learned quickly that through personal training, you can build trust and relationships with people. And so I started putting business deals between my clients, and eventually got pulled into the investment world, and my business career started to blossom.
Yeah, it's kind of, you picked up what you have left for 8 years and way more, sort of. Do you feel that this journey has helped you accomplish more nowadays? And what's your relationship with accomplishment also?
Has this journey helped me accomplish more? Well, I don't know where I would have been without it. I would say, I don't know if accomplish more is the right word, but definitely put me on a truer path, meaning that with the knowledge I have in my backstory, I'm capable of helping probably a lot more people now than I would have if my other life path were to exist. On social media, I mostly use LinkedIn, but I've done posts that have reached millions of people just sharing my personal story. And I get people reaching back to me from Africa, India, Asia, all over the US, just reaching out and sharing their story just to have someone to listen. So I know I'm definitely having an impact. And how do I define achievements? So I'll say a few things there. I'll say one is I definitely stepped away from perfectionism. Okay. Perfectionism is like, it's a death trap. It just consumes you, eats you alive. And at the end of the day, it spits you out. There's no better way to put it. And for me, I strive towards excellence over perfection. Right. And excellence is, or I'll say I strive towards doing my best. And what I'll say there is my best is the best I can do given that moment in time in my situation. It's not the best I can do over my entire life period, but it's more of the best I can do given that moment in time. So.
What's your relationship with achievement nowadays? Do you still feel the urge to achieve? And how can you make sure that you have all the tools that you need to achieve?
Sure. So I think it's hardwired in my DNA at this point that I just want to go out there and perform. I'm competitive by nature. I've tuned it down a little bit for other areas of my life that don't need to be. But for me, like achieving, performing, competition, those are parts that make me happy. They don't make me whole, but they're pieces that make me happy for sure. And the second part, what was the second part of your question?
Yeah, the tools so that you make sure that, because I view it the same way as you. I try to maximize my performance that day, aka showing up mostly and practicing, but I also want to make sure I have the OS updates in my brain, whether that is this podcast questioning you, whether that is brain sparring with GPT. I need to have the tools to perform. What are these tools in your case?
So my greatest tool to perform, this would be a little more of a broader spectrum, is my Rolodex. It's the people I know. I know people in all wakes of life. And if there's a situation that comes up, I pretty much know who to go to. So, I myself am a performance specialist, but when I was doing my last fitness feat, which was 1,000 strict pull-ups, 2,000 push-ups, 3,000 squats with a 24-pound vest, I also pulled in a specialist who was a Nike scientist to hop in and work with me, right? So I have like that connection. If I'm in the business world doing deals, I have teams I've built around me. So my tools are people, and it's the people I surround myself with are my greatest tools. Also, I would call myself a high-performing person with ADHD. I also have some learning disabilities. But what I found is instead of focusing on how to fix my weaknesses, I leverage my strengths and I automate or delegate my weaknesses. Now, there's tools you can use online. There's AI, and I've used some of those definitely. But I have like an amazing assistant named Andrea. She's out from Venezuela. And she's like, if she were to disappear tomorrow, I don't know what would happen to me. All right. But definitely a huge lifeline.
Lots of wisdom there. Your Rolodex, how do you get it? I use this podcast to meet folks like you. So that's my entry door. Then how do you organize it, aka like a CRM, to keep track of your relationship? And how do you reactivate it?
Okay, so one is how do you get it? You might have to repeat these back to me, but one is how you get it. What I tell people is this. If you go into a room of 40 people, what are you going to tell someone that's going to have you be remembered out of all those 40 people? Okay. That's my biggest piece of advice. For me, I've gotten really comfortable telling my personal story, my personal adversity, but not just saying like, throwing it out there, like shocking people, but being able to story tell in a way that's less about bringing drama to a conversation and more about bringing inspiration or how to weave it into someone else's passion. So one is, how do you become a memorable person? And then two is you got to put yourself out there. So if there's events to meet people, that's one way. LinkedIn I had had developed relationships with huge networkers that just, you maximize your connection each day, connection requests, meet people, take chances, set up meetings with people you don't know, but have interesting backgrounds. I mean, you got to put yourself out there. I travel to meet people, different places in the US or outside the US. I was in Vancouver last weekend just to fortify relationship, because that personal relationship's a little bit stronger. And then how do you reactivate? Well, so great question. How do you reactivate? I use LinkedIn in a couple different ways, right? A lot of my relationships are around the business world. And the way I see LinkedIn is I do post 5 days a week, and I'm the one creating my post. And I also hold a sign up, make it very personal. Within that world, when I put that content out there, that's meaningful content, I'm becoming relevant in other people's lives. So they see me consistently, unless they decide to block me or something, which I don't know if that ever happens, but they're seeing me consistency, which lets people know that I exist and kind of keeps people updated what I'm up to do. So there's good ways to use social media to build kind of a relationship with other people out there. So when you do get in touch with them, they have some insight what's going on to your life. And they also are saying, I have a guy, I think he was the vice president of Walgreens that was beating my cousin who was a partner in Goldman Sachs. And he mentioned to my cousin when they're at a business meeting, he's like, wait, Stephen Wisch, are you Alex Wisch's cousin? And he's like, yeah. And so Stephen calls me up and he says, Alex, I got, the vice president of Walgreens here that wants to talk to you. And the guy's like, hey, I've been following your content and all this stuff. So it's how do you get your face in front of an individual multiple times, kind of like marketing in some way, but it makes it relevant.
So if you need something, you can even post and say, do anyone know anyone that does this at this point when you have so much followers, right?
Yeah, I'll say this too. It's not just about followers. It's really about engagement. It's 100% about engagement. I have it, and I go about answering almost every of my comments, so people know that I'm listening, right? So I get 200, 300, 500, 600 comments on a post in a given day. And I have 37,000 followers. Some people have 200, 300, a million followers, but my engagement's just way up there.
Right. And how did you get that off the ground? Was it like a vulnerability post that really got viral? How did you get to your first 10,000s and then from 10,000s to 30, let's say?
Sweat, tears, and nights of semi going insane. But let's sum that up a little better. I have a great team. I got a guy named Grant that's a partner of mine, and he's really good at getting my content in front of the right people. So, it's kind of like a little bit of a billboard approach where you're able to get the eyes in front of the right people, so you have the best chance to become viral, right? And then over time, you build content, and you really got to look at and understand the analytics, being okay, this is the content that people are most engaged in. This is the content that gets the most followers. But this wasn't I had one post that did over 3.5 mil and I got a couple thousand followers out of that. But there wasn't one post. It's been just multiple going at it 5 or 7 days a week of creating content, and it's just trickling in. And sometimes you get those big bumps.
Let's talk about pain for a moment before we get to your businesses. What's your relationship with pain? Because I'm not sure if people understand the feat of doing 1,000 push-ups and the pull-ups with a 25 pounds vest. That's a lot of fucking pain. First, tell us about the events that led to that pain, what you've accomplished in that regards, and what's your relationship to pain?
Sure. I want to mention one thing first. Pain is relative, okay? If you're somebody who gone through an extremely, extremely excruciating, something that's extremely painful, and then you go through something else that's also painful, but not as painful, you have a reference point, right? So I went through 8 years, and I want to get really real with you here. I went through 8 years of severe depression, constant suicidal ideation, being in a dark room, think of being in a dark room with no stimulus, severely depressed, constantly bombarded with like negative thoughts for multiple years. Like to me, that is like the definition of pain. So no matter what fitness feat I take on, that's a privilege. And I look at that pain as something completely different. I look at that pain as like, hey, I'm putting myself through this pain. This is an option that I choose. I'm in control of the situation. I can stop it whenever I want to. And that pain, I will take that pain any day over mental anguish. 110%. 110%.
That puts stuff into context. I mean, that's the reality, and I fully understand. Well, I don't even come near into understanding the pain you went through for 8 years. I can somewhat imagine the pain you went through during those events, which is physical pain. And I have got these bouts as well, like all humans, but yeah, and I have some reference point, but yeah, that is like deep fucking pain and Dante's Inferno type of pain. So endurance events, like how are these different and what have you accomplished there? Like, please repeat the feats. Also mention the time it took you, the calories you've burned, etc.
So I'll talk about the feats. So when the pandemic started, I mean, one big antidepressant for me for mental health has been fitness, right? And there were, just to tell you a little bit about that fitness journey, the sailing I trained for a while. I got into MMA. I did multiple different sports, competed in MMA for a while until I realized my career was going to be, you just get injured. And I like to think I have a decently looking good face, like a decent face, and I didn't really want to destroy that too much. So later on, eventually got into Spartan racing. I've done like well over 50 plus races. I was training I wanted to win the Stadium World Series, tore both adductors when I was at the best shape of my entire life. That was devastating. Got really depressed after that from that situation. Then I got to train for the America's Cup, which was all upper body. And that's like the arm ergometer. So it's imagine like an upside down bike that you're using your arms on. Got into CrossFit because I needed to be like 200 pounds and I'm like slightly under 5'9". And I got into as strong as I could get. And then when the pandemic hit and there was nothing to come train for, I was like, I need to create a competition to train for. So I thought, who's the best competition? I was like, the best competition is myself. So I created this feat. It was a playoff of Murph. And it's kind of like Murph times 10. But instead of kipping pull-ups or anything else, it was all strict pull-ups. I didn't want anyone to question my pull-up method. So I was like, we're doing exactly strict, chin over the bar every time, arm straight. And my vest was 24 pounds. It was about 46 degrees out, freezing rain. I didn't plan for that. That was not something I trained in. So that was an unexpected variable. But yeah, so the 24-pound vest, did 1,000 strict pull-ups, 2,000 push-ups, 3,000 squats. I did it in 6 hours, 8 minutes, and we raised $37,000 for veterans' mental health.
Whoa.
So that was the big one. Now, after that, I was planning on a lot earlier this year to do my second feat, which I was pretty much almost fully trained for until I actually injured my back. And I'll still be doing that at a later date. But that what I'm training for is to climb the most vertical feet in 24 hours, which is, oh my goodness, it's 29,130 feet. I have to climb over that distance in 24 hours. And to date, I've done over 8,000 vertical, and I think that was 5 or 6 hours. But yeah, I injured my back, so I had to stop training. And that kind of training is too, you're going in there for a Saturday and you're doing you're on a rock climbing wall for like 8-10 hours. It's that plus like assault bike training, plus, you're making sure that your body's intact and not getting injured. So.
Wow. Okay. First, like anytime I come down to New York, let's do like a crazy feat and raise money together.
100%.
Second thing, do you know about Mount Olympus?
Fill me in. Fill me in.
I talked to a guy today, and behind him was a poster of Mars, and the highest mountain on Mars is Mount Olympus. It's 21 kilometer, and I want to be one of the first to climb that one. So hope I can sign you up on that one too. It should take around 3 months or so, or 9 actually. 3 months if we're bunkers, 9 if we're not. But yeah, listening to your feats is just like, oh, man, how does he do it? You know, like the question I have though is related to injuries, right? I want to have a very long ultra career. Recently, I discovered Vibram 5 fingers to run, and it's been game changing. I don't have any knee pain after 30+ kilometer runs. How can you manage injury with a mind that keeps on pushing a body? Like what is how, when do you know it's a limit? You know, it's like, oh, I feel this weird ass pain. It's not a muscle pain, it's like a tendon and weird pain. Like, when do you actually stop? How can you push your limits without breaking your shins like David Goggins?
Okay, so the one thing people need to understand is that when people think of grit, people think of grit is perseverance plus passion or purpose, right? And people think of grit as the grit to just go out there like David Goggin, like tackle anything. But there are two sides to grit. There actually is multiple sides of grit, but I'll talk about two sides. So there is that grit that it's like the David Goggin style, right? But there's also grit, and that's the grit to recover. That's actually, it takes grit to hold yourself back and be like, hey, like, I'm going to chill and, do nothing or recover, or take an ice bath or do something else. That takes equal or even more grit than going out there and doing stuff. Especially like me, like my baseline with like ADHD is movement. Like I don't like sitting still. I just don't. What I've done is this. When I worked, I asked myself, okay, when I was training my athletes, I told them, I said, hey, if you're ever questioning a time that if you're asking yourself if you should be training or not, give me a call. I would tell that to every one of my athletes, right? And the reality is, if they call me and they're questioning if they should train, they shouldn't train. They should take the day off. With professional athletes, with athletes in general, it's not a matter of, most of these people, it's not a matter of have you trained enough. That's not what it ever comes down to. It comes down to, do you get injured, right? Because if you can have a career where you don't get injured, even if you have to dial it back here and there, you're going to have constant adaptation and gains over time. So for me, if I get an injury, in the past, I would have pushed through and tried different stuff. And I'll still like my thought is this, like if my legs are injured, then I'm going to like work hard upper body. Like I might go on the bike, put my feet up and just use my arms, right? If I can't walk, I'm using my arms. If I can't use my arms, I'm using my legs, right? But if there is something that is off a little bit, I know enough that I need to rest until it's 100% plus a few days after that, until I'm getting back on it, or I'm just going to go on this merry-go-round of injuries and really never be able to train 100%. I'll throw one more thing real quick. The really cool thing that I used for my feats, and I use now more often when I'm training for these feats, because there's so much wear and tear on the joints, fingers, and body, is thermal imaging. I don't know how many people out there are doing this, but it's something that I came across. And you can get like a thermal imaging hookup for your phone, Apple phone or Droid or whatever it is. You stand in front of it, it takes a picture of you, and you look at both your left and right side, and at your joints at different areas. If there's a degree temperature between your left and right side, that higher degree is usually an indication of inflammation. So if you see that inflammation, that means you shouldn't train that day, and you're being preventative. Before you even have an injury, it's telling you to back off. The guy that came up with that applied it to the Navy SEALs, and because they're getting so many injuries, and they basically their injury rate went down like 75% from doing that.
Wow, dude. Okay, so I'm a deep biohacker. Never heard of that one. Not even Ben Greenfield talked about that one. So thank you for that one. I'm gonna check it out. And yeah, it makes a lot of sense when you think about it. Want to learn more about your businesses with an S? Sure. Tell me about Wisch Fit, the first one, and tell me about the $1 billion deal one, which appeals to your New Yorker Wall Street side.
Yeah. So the Wisch Fit, I mean, that to me is like my passion play. So look, I mean, like people ask me like, who do you work with? And that keeps evolving like every month. I take on like 15 clients at a time. I don't go past that because I want to offer high quality. But like right now, like I'll give an example of like the variety of people I've worked with. Like I've worked with a guy, he closed out, he sold one of the largest insurance companies, and he was figuring out the next direction in his life. Whether it's opening another insurance company, being an investor. And so I kind of helped him work on like life purpose and direction. And he also did some like fitness. He also did a lot of biking competitions. So I kind of mix in a little bit of both. I have a guy that's originally out of Europe, and he is a business individual that he doesn't have his own home, but he travels all the time. So he lives at different parts of the world, and he has a business that does very well online, but he's making a transition from that online business to becoming a professional DJ. And he's super talented in the DJ space. So it's like, you know, his lifestyle is like super different, super unique. And we're like doing branding around his DJing. You know, we're also going to focus on the life purpose, you know, goal setting, structuring your day, peak performance. I worked with a professional ballerina who wrote a book, became another coach. I worked with a professional athlete that opened up one of the largest or one of the most successful franchises within that industry over in the Denver area. So it's all about peak performance. It's all about problem solving. There's a business development aspect, business strategy, but it's really just inspiring individuals and helping them perform at their most peak consistently and preventing burnout, right? So that's the Wisch Fit world. Now, Connected, completely different beast. You know, I have two other partners in that. Again, it's all about, you know, I have my specialty, which is networking, and then my partners have a lot of different specialties within networking, but like operations. So we're really good synergies. That was created from just relationships I developed over time in the lending space. And through those relationships, I put together a group of people that are very talented. And now we're able to, like, on record, where the lenders go after, you know, anywhere from like 100 mil to like, we're working on like a $10 billion real estate projects throughout the US. So it's kind of crazy to look at these numbers and to meet these people in this world. But it's, you know, for me, what motivates me there is being able to take the capital I make and reinvest it into the mental health space. So again, it's my whole ecosystem around mental health and helping people. But it's that's a whole different beast, man. Yeah, it's fun, it's crazy. You know, today I'll give you an example. Today I had someone call me that said, "Hey, Alex, I have a really famous person, I can't mention their name, that has an $800 million ruby and that wants to lend off it, wants $200 million off this ruby." So I get crazy calls, man, all the time. Some of them I don't know what to do with, some of them I don't know what to believe, but it's a fun, interesting world.
$800 million ruby? What the fuck?
I can't get too much into the story, but yeah,
it's like the most expensive ruby of the world right there.
You actually, when I went down the rabbit hole and talked to a ruby expert, they told me they had someone come to them, I guess with a couple rubies that were worth like a cumulative like 2 billion. So I don't know, man, rubies aren't my world, but like I learn about different, you know, assets as I go in this business, and it's nuts.
So this person, they come to you and they're like, "I have a $800 million ruby as a collateral. Can you lend me 200 million off it so I can have liquid cash?" And you charge them like 5% interest.
Well, for one thing, I'll just say this, you know, like that, we didn't take the deal. There's way too much due diligence to understand like who actually owns the ruby, where's the provenance. Like what I learned is like, you're looking at 3 to 9 months of due diligence, and you have to charge a significant fee to do that. So we're not doing the deal. But theoretically, you know, we're looking at projects, we charge a certain amount of interest, and we give money over tranches of over a period of time in tranches, and we look for something to secure the loan. You know, in the real estate space, it could be the project itself. We can secure it with money behind it. We can secure it with IP. It all depends.
And the interest rate, let's say on $10 billion deal, like what is that? Like 5%, 2.5?
No, I mean 2.5 would be crazy. I don't think that exists. But so prime, we're below prime. So you're looking like mid single digits. Okay, you're looking at mid single digits, which is pretty impressive. So you're looking like we're able to do, let's just say, everything averaged in, fees, everything. Like you're looking at like 6 and up, depending on how risky the deal is.
Holy shit, man. So you're talking about 600 million on a $10 billion deal of cash. For
theoretically, there's a lot that, yeah, there's a lot of ways that money gets worked out, but yes, that interest is insane for these big deals.
How do you make sure that you lend to the, I mean, huge due diligence? Do you use AI into this? Does that factor in? And then who actually lends the money? You have deals with GP Morgan, Goldman, like, is that how it works?
A little different, but I can't get too much into the details. I don't think anyone here has signed an NDA with us yet, so catch up too much into that. But let's just say it's the world of private banking. This isn't institution. This isn't like an institutional money. It's private banking. So, you know, we're backed by some really powerful individuals that have a lot of abilities in the banking space and a lot of capital to their disposal. A lot of the abilities to do this has to do with very strong relationships that other individuals have developed over many years of working within the industry.
So let's say in the 6%, half goes to the actual folks in the back end, right? That you have deals with these very powerful individuals, 3%, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, they're making most of it, and then we make a couple points off it. Yeah.
Make pennies on the dollars, which are worth 100 to 200 million in the end. Very exciting, man. Very ambitious. Yeah. It must have its challenges, though. When is the return on that? Like, how far do you extend the loan? Are we talking about a return in 5 years, in 10 years?
Yeah. So I mean, it goes in as tranches. So like when someone works with us, this is a little detailed. We tranche capital out every month. If they don't use the money, then it kind of builds up to a larger tranche whenever they do pull it. But you know, some projects take a certain amount over a 4 or 5 year period of time. You know, our largest projects, like this $10 billion project, that is scaled over 10 years, right? So, you know, you make the money over the time that when the money gets pulled and put into the project is kind of like in real time. That's when you make it. So it's not all at once. This isn't like somebody needs $10 billion. You give them a check for 10 billion. This is like, you're giving them tranches along a pretty sophisticated journey, and you're making sure the project goes smooth. And if it goes south at all, you know, there's a team that can step in and make sure the project gets delivered. So we're not going to lose. We're going to make sure that we're working in a project that we can have a team come in and finish it if need be.
Very exciting stuff. Only in the US or worldwide?
Any place the US can do business. I think we won't do in India just because some of the challenges with the government makes it a little challenging. There's a few other places with government you have to be very particular with, but international we can work. We're looking, like, if anyone else there wants to message me and has a cool deal in Peru, I'm very interested in that space right now, but like, yeah, international is fine.
I might have contacts for you in the gold and mines and so forth. Let you know. Do you have 10 more minutes?
Yeah, I got plenty of time.
Okay, cool. Perfect. All right. That business is quite interesting. The first one is also interesting to me. The question is, how do you get these high performers in the first place? Do they hear from you on LinkedIn and they reach out?
Yeah, so it's a combination. So I would say yes. I mean, my content speaks to a lot of people. I mean, here's the reality. I talk about mental health. I talk about peak performance. Your audience is pretty wide, right? And when you open up and you've checked a few boxes, like if you can check a box and show great testimonials of helping people, and you've shown that you've overcome challenges yourself and you've been in the tranches, which sometimes some coaches don't really have in their back pocket. But when you check those boxes off, people reach out to me online, they schedule calls and breakthrough sessions, what I call them. A lot of times I also just get referrals. Through these relationships, people refer other people to me, have calls, check in, and yeah. And from there, it needs to be mutually decided. I won't work with anyone. I have a very, very strong theory about having just positive energy around you. So as long as I keep my like the people around me, including my clients that have like, and people, everyone's got their challenges, but I keep it like pretty close knit with positive energy, because that's what I feed off. That's what fuels me on a day-to-day basis.
Forgot to ask a question on the second business, which is super interesting also. Is your back end basically, if they don't pay you, you can literally reclaim the properties? You need to make sure that the legal system is capable of allowing you that in a short time frame? Is that the strategy?
Yeah, recourse. You're talking about recourse.
Yep.
So it's project dependent. So we look at securitizing a loan. All right. So depending on the project, it could be like the project itself could be securitized by the land of the project. It could be securitized by the phase of the project. There could be IP behind the project. There could be other assets. But yeah, I mean, if people don't pay, if people don't pay the loan off, then we're going to come and take what we secured in the beginning.
And the value of that is pretty high as well. How much folks are into that business? For example, does JP Morgan have a division that does that? Who's your competition?
Well, we try to be a little under the radar just because we don't really want to be known to our competition. So I haven't done too many talks like this before, but I mean, there's large institutes, there's very large PE groups out there, private equity, perhaps JP Morgan in some extent, but you're looking at like large PE groups that have like multi-billions, hundreds of billions under assets that can go out there and lend at this regard. But yeah, the better you can kind of like swing under the radar, so you're not making too many sleeping giants, the better you are in the business world.
A couple of left and right turns because we have 5 minutes left here. In MMA, when you get your lights put out, like what happens mentally? And second, when you're under a choke, what happens mentally?
Yeah, for sure. I know we're jumping back in time now. So this is really interesting. We'll talk about the choke first. When you're in a time that you're getting choked out, or you're in a situation that you're in, it feels like you're in like sudden death. You're going to like live or die, right? Fight or flight. You got to train yourself to relax. The worst thing you can do is tense up and freak out because you're wasting energy, you're wasting oxygen, you're likely going to make the situation worse. So if you learn to like relax, calm, understand your surroundings, and then kind of figure out a game plan pretty quickly, the likelihood of you getting out of that situation multiplies exponentially. Okay. So when you're getting choked in that situation, you got to slow things down, find the right position to get a bit of breath. And if you don't, respectably, you got to know your limits and tap out. If you don't tap out, then you wake up someplace and you're confused for a little bit. And then you kind of get up and you realize you've lost the battle, or we'll say lost that battle, but haven't lost the war. Getting knocked out, I mean, it's like you're up 1 second, you're on the ground, and next, again, you're a little confused. You're getting back up for like a couple seconds, and then yeah, it's like in the wind knocked out of you, but with your eyes shut, and you wake up, and you're a little surprised.
And then like it's just like you said, losing the battle but not losing the war. Sailing, you're like a high performer. Are you as good as a teammate? You're good at competing. Are you great at cooperating on the boat so that we reach our destination the quickest?
100%. A couple of things with the sailing, and I use this a lot in the business world, is when you're captaining a boat, I mean, I'll be tactician, I'll captain, I'll trim sails. When you're with a team, and let's say you're in charge, you're a leader. For any leaders out there, if you hit stormy conditions or something where people are looking at you, those are the most important times to remain calm, because how you behave, it's going to reflect on everyone else, right? And then the other piece I'll say is like the best teams out there, there's a concept, I do a lot around flow, and I know our time's limited, but flow is this idea where like you kind of like time evaporates and you're fully immersed in whatever you're doing. There's a concept called group flow. And group flow is like around hive mind. And so if you get a really good team that's super in sync, communication's really good, there's shared risk, shared goals. There's this like challenge skill ratio that's on the table. Like everyone just connects as one body part almost, or as one body. And no one's really talking, but everyone knows what to do next, right? Those are like the best teams out there. So that's like group flow. And that's the overall goal you'd want to get your team into.
Last question. demons never fully evaporate, how do you keep the depression demon at bay? Because it's, I mean, I have my demons too. It's fucking with me sometimes. And when I am in some biochemical states, I have various tactics. I'm eager to learn yours to keep that one at bay.
Yeah. It's so I'm going to be very transparent about this. Look, I mean, for me, there's a multifaceted approach. Okay. I for one, like I do take some medication. I'm not a full, like, you have to take medication. You don't have to take medication. Everything's different for everyone else. But I take something just to kind of keep my floor a little bit up. I have some supplements that like are really good to optimize mitochondria, like inflammation. Those are really important. But like keeping like your demons at bay, I will check in with myself at the end of a day throughout a week. And I've gotten really good at like assessing burnout or symptoms of burnout. And also like I have a therapist and I make sure that like every once in a while he checks in with me, and someone around you per se, like if you have someone around you, like if they know what your warning signs are, like if you're all of a sudden getting restless, if you're like stress levels going up, like, and that's kind of going towards burnout, they're the best indicator. The people around you are going to more or less detect it earlier than you are. So like a spouse, a loved one, like that makes a really good team. For me, it's, and there's also non-negotiable. So I mean, like sleep, non-negotiable. I have to get my sleep. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. If I start getting short on that, like I have to have a reset. Nutrition, I don't cut short on that. And exercise, I fit in. It doesn't have to be all or nothing, could be shades of gray. But if I'm not getting those three things and social interaction throughout a week, like I put myself at risk. So I look to have non-negotiables in my life.
Love it. I would add to that community,
100%.
community of brothers and sisters, because yeah, we all go through some dark periods. And when you have other folks that understand your mindset, in my case, I have a CEO community, you know, and I'm always there for my CEOs if they have anything. Mental health is this thing that needs more conversations. And yeah, I'm super grateful that you came today and talked to us about that and being like vulnerable and authentic. I love that. I'm the same way. Thank you so much, Alex. Where can people find out more about you?
Yeah. So on the social media side, I mean, I do my most content, the most up-to-date content is going to be on LinkedIn. So you just find me. It's Alex and Wisch, Wisch. I also have an IG, and I would say I'm relatively active on that. I put some fitness stuff in there, some daily stuff, and I'll bring some other of my content from LinkedIn onto that too. But that's Wisch, Wisch.fit. If you want to work with me, you can just type in Wisch Fit or wisch.com and check me out. But yeah, always happy. If you have a challenge, I'll say this out there. If you have something you don't know what to do with, or if you hit a point and you don't know who can help you or how to get help, I'm your guy. I'm that problem solver. I'm really good at those abstract situations.
Love it, man. I'll keep that in mind. I will reach out because yeah, the entrepreneurial journey, shit gets hard sometimes, and you hit some massive lows. And at the beginning of this year, that was my situation. I told you that in our first call, and I did the ultra it like you did solo on a YouTube live. That was my cure. So we have the same cure or prevention aspect, and it's important that people sleep, do their physical activities, and don't neglect that. Super important. Plus the community. So thank you so much for that, Alex.